Every inhabited continent carries her African footprint somewhere in its bloodline. We uncover the women history left behind. Her story, our history, our legacy. This is Roots Unspoken.
In 1900, a room full of Ashanti chiefs sat in silence, too afraid of British military power to do the one thing their culture demanded of them: defend the most sacred object their kingdom possessed. A woman around 60 years old stood up in front of them and said, roughly translated, that if the men of Ashanti would not go forward, then the women would, that she would call upon her fellow women, and that they would fight until the last of them fell on the battlefield. Her name was Yaa Asantewaa. She was not a soldier. She was a queen mother and a grandmother, and the last person in that room the British Empire ever expected to raise an army against it. Real women, real artifacts, real history. This is Roots Unspoken. Yaa Asantewaa was born around 1840 in Basise in the Ashanti Empire in what is now Ghana. Her brother, the ruler of Ejisu, appointed her queen mother, and it is worth being precise about what that meant because the English translation badly undersells it. Queen Mother was not a ceremonial title. It was a formal political office in Ashanti governance with real institutional power, advising the king, helping select and approve the men who would become chiefs, and safeguarding the kingdom's most sacred royal symbols. When her brother died in 1894, Yaa Asantewaa exercised her right as Queen Mother to nominate the next ruler of Ejisu herself, and she chose her own grandson. So understand the shape of this. She held genuine authority in a political system that had a formal, respected place for powerful women, and that system was about to collide with a colonial government that had no such concept at all, one that would look at her and see only an old woman. In 1896, the British exiled Prempeh I, the Asantehene king of the entire Ashanti Empire, along with much of the royal government, to the Seychelles Islands, nearly 4,000 miles away in the Indian Ocean. Yaa Asantewaa's own grandson, the young ruler of Ejisu she had personally nominated, was taken with them. Think about what that does to a nation: not a defeat in battle, a decapitation. The king gone, the government gone. Shipped to an island most Ashanti had never heard of, with no stated date of return. With the throne of Ejisu empty and its rightful holder an ocean away, Yaa Asantewaa became regent. She governed in his place, holding the line for a monarchy the British clearly intended to dismantle for good. On the 25th of March 1900, the British governor Frederick Hodgson came to Kumasi and stood before the assembled Ashanti chiefs. Their king was still in exile, and Hodgson told them the king would not be coming back, that his power now belonged to the representative of the Queen of Britain, and then he asked for the Golden Stool, not as a gift, not as a trophy for a museum in London. His recorded words make the intention unmistakable. He asked why they had not brought the Golden Stool for him to sit upon. To understand why that landed like a declaration of war, you have to understand what the stool actually was, and we have an entire episode coming on exactly that. For now, the short version. The Golden Stool was not furniture. The Ashanti believed it held the soul of the nation itself. The spirit of every Ashanti who had lived, was living, and was yet to be born. It was so sacred that not even the Asantehene, the king, was permitted to sit on it. It never touched the ground, and a foreign colonial governor had just asked to put his body on it in front of them as a demonstration of who now owned them. Hodgson seems to have genuinely believed he was asking for a chair. What he had actually done was tell an entire nation, out loud, that he intended to sit on their soul. The chiefs hesitated, and it is worth saying plainly, their fear was rational. They had watched this empire take their king, take their government, and put them on a ship. Open war against it could end the Ashanti nation entirely. Fear was winning the room, and fear had good arguments. Yaa Asantewaa did not hesitate. She rose. And this is where we have to be honest with you, because what she said next comes down to us through oral tradition, not a transcript. The wording varies between tellings, but every version carries the same blade. She told them she had seen that some of them feared to go forward and fight for their king. She said that in the days of the great Ashanti kings, chiefs would not have sat and watched their king be taken without firing a shot. And then she said the words that outlived her. If you, the men of Ashanti, will not go forward, then we will. We, the women, will. I shall call upon my fellow women, and we will fight until the last of us falls on the battlefield. She did not shame them by calling them cowards. She shamed them by volunteering to do it without them. And it worked. Within a short time, war had been decided. And in a move without precedent in Ashanti history, Yaa Asantewaa was placed in overall command of the campaign, not as a symbol, not as a mascot, as the commander. The war that followed is remembered as the War of the Golden Stool, and in Ashanti memory, simply as the Yaa Asantewaa War. It remains the only major anti-colonial conflict in Ashanti history commanded by a woman. Beginning in March 1900, her forces, roughly 5,000 fighters, though some accounts put the number far higher, closed on Kumasi and laid siege to the British fort, trapping Governor Hodgson, his wife, his officials, several hundred colonial soldiers, and hundreds of African civilians inside its walls. This was not a symbolic protest. It was a sustained military siege of a fortified imperial position, planned, supplied, and held, conducted by an army under the command of a woman of about 60, at the precise moment when Ashanti's traditional male leadership had been exiled, removed, or frightened into paralysis. She cut the roads. She cut the telegraph lines. She was not making a point. She was trying to win. The siege held for more than 3.5 months. Inside the fort, it went exactly the way sieges go. The food ran down, disease moved through the garrison, and on the 23rd of June 1900, the governor of the Gold Coast, the same man who had demanded to sit on the soul of the Ashanti nation, broke out of his own fort with his wife and about 100 Hausa soldiers and ran for the coast to meet a relief column. Sit with that. The representative of the British Empire fled Kumasi in the night because a grandmother had him surrounded. It took a substantial reinforcement, thousands of imperial troops drawn from Britain's other West African colonies, to finally break the siege and turn the war. The reinforcements did what reinforcements do. The siege broke. The Ashanti forces were pushed back and eventually Yaa Asantewaa was captured, but look closely at what it cost the British to win. This was not an uprising the colonial government swatted aside and forgot. It took the machinery of an empire, troops shipped in from other colonies, a full military campaign, to defeat an army raised by a woman the same empire had considered beneath its notice. In 1901, she was put on a ship. Yaa Asantewaa was exiled to the Seychelles, heading a list of 15 sent with her, the same islands where her king had already been held for 5 years. So she came at last to the Seychelles, not as a queen mother, not as a commander, but as a prisoner, joining the exiled court she had gone to war to bring home. She was baptized on the islands and took the Christian name Elizabeth. Historians tend to read that as pragmatic accommodation to her circumstances rather than a change of conviction, an old woman making her peace with the place she was going to die. And according to the accounts passed down, there was one more grief waiting for her. She had hoped to find her grandson there, the young ruler of Ejisu she herself had chosen, taken in 1896. He was not among the faces she found. That absence is said to have stayed with her for the rest of her life. Yaa Asantewaa died in exile on the 17th of October, 1921. She never saw Ashanti again. In December of 1924, King Prempeh I, after 28 years, was finally allowed to come home, and he did not come home alone. He made sure the remains of Yaa Asantewaa and the other exiled Ashanti were carried back with him so that she could be buried in Ejisu with the honors of the royal house. She came home in a coffin, but she came home. The independence she fought for arrived on the 6th of March, 1957, 36 years after her death, when the Ashanti lands became part of an independent Ghana. She never saw that either, but she is why the fight for it began in dignity instead of surrender. The first, and to this day, the only woman to lead the Ashanti into war against a colonial power, and one of the most celebrated resistance leaders in the history of West Africa. In the year 2000, on the centenary of the war she led, Ghana opened a museum in her honor at Kwaso, in the district she had once governed as regent. Inside were her sandals and her battle dress. On the 23rd of July 2004, the museum burned down. The sandals and the battle dress burned with it. Reconstruction has been promised for years, and for years the site sat in ruins. There is something almost unbearably fitting about that, and something that misses the point entirely. Because Yaa Asantewaa was never the sandals, she was never the dress. She was the moment a room full of frightened men were told by a grandmother that if they would not defend the soul of their nation, she would do it without them. And here is the last thing. The Golden Stool, the object the British demanded, the object she went to war for. The British never got it. It was hidden throughout the entire war, and it stayed hidden for 21 more years until road workers dug it out of the ground by accident in 1921. The same year she died in exile, still believing it was lost. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And on the next episode, the Golden Stool, the throne the British Empire never got to sit on.